everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you for joining me for this week's Astro Weather. The big news of the week, well, there's a bunch of stuff happening, but the big news of the week is definitely the Mercury Retrograde that is going to be taking place in the sign of Aquarius. So this is going to cover all of the transits from January 9th through January the 15th, so for the next week. If you have not already, hit that bell button below so you can be notified and be aware of when I'm putting videos out. Please do. Subscriptions and any interaction on the channel really helps me get into the astro kind of community in YouTube and get more of this information out there, so I appreciate that. Those of you guys who are my members, I also just want to give a special thank you for supporting the channel and making it possible for me to keep doing what I'm doing. I do my roll call for all my supporters during my live videos that I'm now doing on Saturdays, so stay tuned for that so you can get your shout out if you are a subscriber. So we are just coming out of the weekend, just having had obviously some pretty intense Mercury shadow. Equally, we experienced yesterday the Sun-Venus cazimi, the midway point for the Venus retrograde transit, if you guys are not aware. Yesterday and even today is an important day to watch for, to get some idea or insight as to whether or not you're doing your Venus retrograde work, which way relationships or even financial situations, health situations are going to fall. It's been an interesting 48 hours. So like I said, anything taking place yesterday or today is going to give you some really keen insight as to how things are going to pan out for the next 20 days and whether or not we're actually transforming and reworking a lot of our Venus retrograde stuff. So if you guys haven't seen my Venus retrograde video, take a look. I have all the dates. I posted that a little while ago. The week is going to kick off with January 9th today. So like I said, wrapping up that Venus cazimi. The transit's interesting because Venus kind of comes ahead of the sun in her retrograde. And Venus, when she is retrograde, like I have said before, it's harder to keep the peace. And she is actually getting ready to be reborn. She's going to hang out with Pluto a couple times. But the Sun-Venus cazimi is also showing us where we almost need to turn inward, do our inner work, our inner emotional work, our inner values are somehow kind of changing and shifting to some extent. Now today also we are having our first quarter square. So the moon is in Aries today and it's in its first square since the new moon in Capricorn. So whenever we're experiencing the new moon first quarter square, it is always like the first kind of turning point, the check-in point, sometimes the crisis point where we start seeing kind of conflict come up. Not abnormal with the moon in Aries, but this is also extremely uncomfortable for the next 48 hours. So if you guys are watching this on Sunday, Monday, just a heads up, Monday the Monday grumps are definitely going to be around. It's also forming squares to both the Sun and Venus in Capricorn. So we talked a little bit about how the Sun, Venus, traditionally it's like warm, right? It's very Venusian, lovable, kind of bursting at the seams with like romance, but not so much when it's in a Capricorn Saturn-based sign. So as if the Venus retrograde Sun conjunction wasn't enough, now we're really feeling the friction on the 9th today with the squares from the moon. So realize that cardinal energies want to initiate. It seems to me like there's something that's not quite getting along. You know, the moon in Aries needs that independence. It needs its own personal time. It needs to be the first that needs to get working on something. And then we've got the Sun and Venus that's like, wait, hold up. So relationships, business stuff, it's not really feeling so positive over the weekend. Unfortunately, it's a little uncomfortable. But also, I think the other aspect of this is just building into some of the transits that are going to be going on throughout the week. So like I said, I'll break them down day by day, but it's all kind of building up really until this uncomfortable transit, a series of uncomfortable transits we're going to have on Tuesday. And then finally, we're also going to see that closer to next week, we're going to be having a really intense full moon in Cancer. Now on Monday, the 10th, tomorrow, we're going to be seeing that the Sun in Capricorn is forming a sextile to Neptune in Pisces. Now, This has been interesting because we've had Venus in the sextile to Neptune. It's been nice because it's helping us become aware of maybe what we're overlooking, maybe what we're not really being too sensitive towards. Venus Neptune aspects or sextiles really help us practice being more compassionate. Now with the sun making a sextile to Neptune, it's almost kind of showing us like, hey, you know, it can't be all work and no play. It can't be so much work to the point of exhaustion. It can't be work without inspiration, without divine connection. So it's really highlighting this need to work both with the energies of the sun in Capricorn, which is busy, and Neptune in Pisces, which is about the overall feeling of what we want to achieve. Now, Pisces is a mutable sign, so it is the last sign of the zodiac. It represents the 12th house, and we can feel some energies this week kind of dissipating, or we're feeling some things kind of falling away because of some mutable squares. So the sun in Capricorn is in a way helping us get active for paving the way for our dreams. So an important place to look at will be Capricorn at Neptune in your chart. Lots of stuff going on there with the sun and Venus and Pluto being in Capricorn, and now Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. I've talked a lot about, especially in my 2022 overview, that we're not really going to feel like the new year has started or that things are really kind of in the flow until we're getting closer to about March, April, May. So really in a way, the next 2 months is still a lot of like reworking, revisiting things, re-examining, re-strategizing. Normally things that we would be doing at like what, October, November, like at the end of the year. And this is where I kind of have conflict because the calendar year does not always really line up with the astrological new year, right? Astrological new year being Aries season, when the sun ingresses in March from Pisces into Aries. That's when we have fresh new energy and we start something new. Now, I like that the new year started with lots of planets in Capricorn helping us get aware of our goals, but Neptune and Jupiter keep kind of saying to us like, okay, re-strategize, do something that's less draining, do something that's going to bring less conflict or confusion, do something that's also going to be in alignment spiritually. So one thing I think that's kind of going on for a lot of people is this internal kind of conversation that they're having that's like, this isn't working for me. It doesn't feel like this is my purpose. Things have to be better. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like that Neptune kind of side of Pisces that can be almost like sometimes helpless, right? But Jupiter and Neptune are really helping us restore the faith. There's almost this like baptism type energy that's going to be happening in February, March of this year that's going to cleanse and kind of clear a lot of things away. It's very emotional. So what I'm expecting this week is just like a lot of emotional breakdowns in preparation for this clearing that really does need to happen because we're going to be starting new cycles. So be present with the emotions, hold space for the sun sextile Neptune. Know that it's really kind of showing us that without purpose, without belief, without a vision, without divine connection, what are we working towards? So there has to be some kind of merger of those two. Now, this is where you want to pull out your red pen and you want to circle the date on your calendar or just make an alert or a note on your digital calendar. This is going to be Tuesday the 11th. This day is a little dicey. Mars in Sagittarius moves to square Neptune in Pisces. And so I kind of like look at this as like a little bit of something being misrepresented or maybe going after something and thinking that it's for like a purpose, like being like, you know, having some kind of spiritual or religious kind of purpose or like conquest, but then things not really matching up, right? So I could see a lot of confusion with this square, manipulation, gossip, things falling apart, issues with clarity, passive aggressive behavior. We think of Mars as like putting the foot on the gas pedal, and we think of Neptune as this kind of otherworldly kind of fog. So when you mix those two together, it's like we're in the car, we're going somewhere, but we don't know where we're going. So you kind of feel a little lost, right? This will be hardest for mutable placements around 18 to 22 degrees. It's going to feel like things are dissolving, unclear, kind of chaotic, a little changing. Now, Mars represents passion, drive, assertiveness. In Sagittarius, it's all about the adventure, the purpose for the direction, the purpose for the action, and probably trying to figure out where we're going. And then we've got Neptune, which is dissolving, confusing, cloudy, and misleading. So we want to watch for being like, jumping into things without knowing the facts, being passive aggressive, having conflict and not communicating and expressing. Neptune tends to be a little invisible, and Mars in Sag is very loud. So there can be some aspect of people reacting and feeling very self-righteous and feeling like they're doing it to protect those in need, or to protect their beliefs, or to protect their religious or their spiritual beliefs. And it's, we're taking the energy of like a heated planet, and we're taking the planet Neptune and throwing the two together. To me, this screams really rocky weather in a number of different places around the world. Issues with fog, issues with motor vehicles. We may even begin to see some real issues involving larger type of transportation pile-ups, right? So I'm thinking of like issues with trains, issues with buses, issues with planes. And you'll really see this also because of the Mercury retrograde as well. So this is definitely a day you want to watch for, gossip, manipulation, not getting involved, being careful with what you hear and how you react to what you hear. Try to lean more into the Neptune side of things, of kind of going like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I can see why you're upset. Let's talk about it. And what I find is with mutable squares, there is this sense of not speaking the same language, especially when you're dealing with Sag and Pisces, not speaking the same language, not being clear, not being aware of people's actions and their body language versus how they're actually really feeling. There can be this sense of people moving throughout the world right now very quickly. Everything's great, everything's fine, I'm great, everything's great. Having this real high optimism, Mars and Sag, only to realize when the Neptune square happens that people are experiencing burnout, fatigue, not seeing things clearly, and also realizing that there's been a lot of either false promises, false beliefs, and now there's going to be this kind of like breakdown. My advice is get in nature, be active, move your body, do things that are going to allow you to ground your energy so you're not projecting frustration or confusion onto other people. Now, why is this day also particularly confrontational? The moon will be in Taurus, which I love, but it's going to come into conjunction with transit Uranus, which means it's going to come into a square with Mercury and Saturn in Aquarius. So when I look at this, I feel like what's interesting, because we do have the moon, we're still looking at Venus. Thank God for the moon, Uranus, it's still in aspects to Venus, still in aspects to the sun. So we're full steam ahead with getting something done. But we're very much in the Mercury retrograde shadow. Actually, later in the week, Mercury will retrograde. So I'm looking at, the moon Uranus as kind of something like changeable, sudden, unexpected. It's going to disrupt us a little bit. Coming into the square with Mercury and Saturn, I feel like we're going to start to begin to see the Mercury retrograde issues, the schedule changes, the people being late, the delays, the issues with electronic transactions, payments, things like that. I think we're going to see lots of volatility financially with what's going on in the world and the markets. So that's something else to watch for. When the moon conjuncts Uranus, I have found that there's always peaks and valleys that are going on very abruptly within about 48 to 72 hours within the markets. Now, thankfully, it's all putting energy into Capricorn. So this is a lot of like our superiors in our life, like our bosses, our government, our leaders, our parents being like, it'll be fine, just go to work, right? This has been this theme, go to work, especially since we've seen lots of changes with the CDC, stuff revolving around how long we have to quarantine, where we do that, how we do that, what their obligations and the restrictions are to going back to work, and Venus is health. So I think that whatever is taking place during this Venus retrograde cycle is definitely paving the way for how employers are supposed to be treating us returning to work, and what the restrictions or obligations are to actually return if you are in fact positive for the virus. So I'm expecting with this Mercury-Saturn conjunction, super serious, very kind of factual, scientific, right? It's more kind of data and information. With the squares to Mars and Uranus, we may find that people are not responding well to what's going on. They don't want to hear it. The markets don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear, businesses don't want to hear, hey, we have to slow down, we have to scale back. So I think that there's going to be some blowback as a result of that. Then we have on the 12th, The moon in Taurus is then fully in a trine with the sun and Pluto in Capricorn. So changes, big changes. Moon's activating that eclipse point that we had back in November. And the moon will be in nice aspects, like I said, to Sun and Pluto. So that is showing us physical shifts and changes and transformations. That's the name of the game. I remember talking to you guys a lot last month, being like, look, we're going to get to the end of January and you guys are going to realize that we're not exactly on track the way we thought we may be in terms of the world kind of opening back up. So this will be an important day to watch because we start implementing some kind of change and we're actually really starting to get into what will eventually be the full moon energies within a couple of days' time. So on the 13th, one thing that I would say, so on the 13th of the month, the moon in Gemini is going to trine Mercury and Saturn. So yes, Mercury is in a square to Uranus. Yes, Mercury is slowing down. It's that pivoting that we've seen all of 2021 when planets move into the fixed signs and they square each other. Those of you guys who are a fixed sign, so if you are a Taurus or a Leo or a Scorpio or an Aquarius, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They want to stick to one program, one kind of routine, and they just want to keep repeating that, right? They carry that energy. They're like master builders. But they're very reluctant to change. So I kind of see like the fixed squares all of 2021 and into 2022 is like gears grinding, and people who are very fixed in their ways of doing something going like, oh, I don't want to make that change. I don't want to change jobs. I don't want to change my spending habits. I don't want to leave the relationship, and having some conflict because they're stubborn, right? So I'm noticing that on one hand, the Mercury square Uranus is kind of staticky and kind of like electric and can be some shocking or kind of unnerving information right when Mercury is about to go retrograde. On the flip side, though, what I am liking is that the moon this day is in Gemini. So it's trining Mercury, it's trining Saturn. That's the saving grace. I told a lot of people last month, if you had to do your Mercury stuff, to actually do it in December because this shadow would be so staticky that it would be very uncomfortable. But if you are somebody who is waiting to the last minute to fix a fuse, have your car looked at, sign a contract, whatever, obviously I would rather you wait until the end of February. However, the world doesn't really work that way for everyone. So I would say like this is the day to get all of your Mercury stuff done. It's very important that you do it on the 13th. Now, on the also on the positive side is that the moon and Mercury is going to get us thinking about communicating, problem solving, thinking about things on a very practical level. It's very sobering, kind of serious with the trines to Saturn. So lean on that, look at that, realize that even though it's getting ready to turn retrograde and things will change, especially because Mercury will actually go into another sign, this is the best day to kind of communicate and get the point across. Now, on the 14th of the week, the moon in Gemini then moves to T-square Neptune and oppose Mars. So probably, I'm trying to be optimistic, but probably one of the worst ways to start off the Mercury retrograde would be with some of these angles. Moon opposed Mars is quite aggressive. It's confrontational. It's a little uncomfortable. There can be a sense of people provoking other people, especially with their beliefs, or I would say even with media, because it's in a mercurial sign. And then the moon is going to square Neptune. So the Mars square Neptune, moon square Neptune. This to me feels a lot of like the same bullshit that was going on Tuesday, the 11th, kind of flowing into midweek and still happening on the 14th. So Mercury goes retrograde this day. Now Mercury will turn retrograde in Aquarius and it will move back into Capricorn. That is the theme for the Mercury retrogrades pretty much for all of 2022. At the end of the year, we're going to have one that's going to be in Capricorn and it's going to stay in Capricorn. If you guys have not already seen my 2022 year ahead video, I talk about all the retrogrades, all the aspects, the eclipses, the most important themes. It's long, but it's got a lot of information in there just to give you some insight as to how the year is going to go. But because this is the very first Mercury retrograde of 2022, this is going to be an interesting theme because it is kind of biting off of 2021. We saw them in air signs last year. They're going to be in air signs again this year. So all Mercury retrogrades this year will start in an air sign and retrograde back into an earth sign. So it starts with communication, information, exchanges, and then it falls back into what will be an earth sign, which is, okay, let's make it practical. So what I'm liking about this year is that all the Mercury retrogrades are in aspect both to Saturn and Pluto. They will retrograde and trine Pluto, and they will also retrograde or go direct and either conjunct Saturn, or they will trine Saturn. So it's almost like, okay, you know, here's the information. This is what Saturn says. It retrogrades into an earth sign, trines Pluto. This is what we change. So get a feel for how this one goes. I'm going to give you the most important dates if you guys want to jot this down. Keep in mind also that this is a Mercury retrograde that's going on during the same time as a Venus retrograde, okay? Mercury will drop back into Capricorn. It'll go through the same territory that Venus has been retrograding through, conjunct Pluto. So when we break this down, Venus represents peace, marriage, harmony, money, relations, right? And Mercury is systems, organization, communications, business, agreements, contracts. So both of these planets are retrograding and both are going to be conjuncting Pluto. Sounds like a lot of people are going to be like, that's not enough money. I'm not feeling the love. This isn't working for me. We need to renegotiate. We need to refinance. We need to restructure. We need to separate. I mean, it's just a lot of like Pluto stuff. I think I've seen more of a influx of clients recently that are so much more willing to opt for debt consolidation, or for finally tackling their credit card debt, or willingly going into counseling or couples counseling. And that's the very Pluto energy that's kind of hovering right now. So on one sense, it helps us go really deep. Venus and Pluto wants us to go deep to the core of relationship or financial or value wounds, while Mercury says, okay, let's talk about it. So there's a method to the madness. There's been a lot of this stuff coming up. And then I think that really like the next month is going to bring up those conversations that's like, well, do we want to talk about what happened at Christmas at the dinner table? Do we want to talk about what you said, you know, around New Year's? And it's all going to start kind of coming out in the wash the next couple weeks. So yeah, you'll notice a lot of the same lessons coming back up. You'll also notice with the conjunctions to Pluto that there is some obsessive or like repetitive thoughts that keep happening. You want to watch the tone. Tones can be sharp. They can be piercing. They can be bossy. They can be mean. They can be very kind of territorial, possessive, Pluto. But I think of the sign of Capricorn as like demanding or about rules, timelines, boundaries, and what does and does not work. So we're kind of reworking that. We're reforming that. I think Venus really is just trying to say, hey, we want something that's going to last. It's going to last the test of time. We want this to be strong. We want it to be something that is going to be even more valuable, right? While I think Mercury is saying, okay, well, in order to do that, we have to kind of get out all the pain. It's like literally like handling a wound right now. There's a lot of wound stuff that's coming up that needs to be cleared out and it needs to be healed. And in order to do that, it's almost like the conversations and the communications are going to be like the sutures that are kind of stitching that up in a way. So a lot of this energy is not going to clear out till March, guys. So just, I'm going to keep telling you this so you realize it's a process. It's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. Here are the dates that I would like to give you. So obviously Mercury is retrograding. Mercury is the planet of business, travel, communication, gadgets. So we think of contracts, leases, buying cars, starting businesses, transactions, anything that relate to things that you sign or that you agree to. Laptops, computers, pets, even things like that are all Mercury related things. So it's going retrograde in the fixed air sign of Aquarius, which is the dead of winter. So it's dealing with being more independent, being more practical, being more capable of doing things on our own, thinking about everybody kind of collectively. There has been an insane amount of emphasis on Aquarius energy in this last year. We saw Saturn move in and out of Aquarius all 2020 and then fully in 2021. We have also seen planets square Saturn. We saw a pileup of planets in Aquarius at the beginning of last year, a Mercury retrograde in Aquarius. all in preparation for taking off the training wheels in 2022 once we actually see the nodes square Saturn and everybody is realizing that they need to become more independent. So society is changing, the world is changing. This is going to be a really important retrograde to get everybody ready for the square that's going to be happening later this year. It will retrograde back into the fixed earth sign of Capricorn. So we take ideas, they become practical, we implement them, we start them, and then we find more independence. So like I said, this will be clearing out closer to February. Now Mercury will retrograde from 10 degrees of Aquarius to 24 degrees of Capricorn. You want to look back to what was going on, what conversations you were having, what decisions you made around December 28th of 2021. Now, these are the most important dates for the Mercury retrograde. They will pan into February, but I'm going to give them to you anyway. On January 22nd, Mercury and the Sun will have a cazimi in the sign of Aquarius, and that's going to highlight some kind of information that was missing or that we were not aware of, some kind of goal or some piece of information. I have found it as like a insightful conversation, a letter that comes in the mail, a text message that I get, an email. Sometimes I'll find like the book that is going to solve the question, you know, that I have. Stuff like that usually pans out with a cazimi for me. On the 26th of January, Mercury will move back into the sign of Capricorn. On the 29th of January, it will conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, and this will be for the second time. And on February 4th, Mercury goes direct at 24 degrees of Capricorn. On February 10th, it will conjunct Pluto again in Capricorn. And then on February 24th, Mercury leaves shadow. So if you're like super hardcore astro whiz and you understand a lot of the things that I'm saying, you would probably hear this and go, oh, so what you're telling me is it's probably best to wait until the end of February to make any big changes. Yes. Whether this is like contracts, moves, negotiations, business launches, I got to tell you, with a Venus and a Mercury retrograde, definitely not the best time to be launching a new business. And I've said this to a lot of people. Because part of what's going to happen is wherever Mercury is in your chart or wherever Capricorn and Aquarius is in your chart, mostly Capricorn, Mercury is going to retrograde back and go, no, we need to reorder some things and we need to decide who's going to be in charge of this, or we're going to kind of, you know, hire somebody to handle this job or do this or do that. So be careful when it comes to launching new business partnerships or new endeavors or like major moves like that. Only because there's just so much energy that's going to be retrograde that the energy is going to flow a lot better the end of February, beginning of March of this year. So those are the most important dates. Why do we have Mercury retrogrades? They clean out the fridge. That's the planet that retrogrades the most. When we have a planet that retrogrades so often and also quite close to Earth, we feel it more than most people. So, or more than most planets, excuse me. So when this happens, we will notice that the car has issues turning over. We're going to notice that there's going to be, you know, problems with receiving our mail or missed packages or flights that get canceled or trips that get delayed. So knowing this gives you the power, knowing like, hey, better double check my travel plans, make sure that that booking is clear, hold off on signing the lease, makes your life a little bit easier. And with all retrogrades, review, revisit, revise. And because both planets are making aspects to Pluto, it's what can we change? What power structures? What are we giving our thoughts and our energy and our time to? Where are we feeling like something is too strict? To some extent, it's kind of felt like a chokehold. And I've heard this from a lot of my clients. I've felt this very much the same way, that, you know, where Capricorn is my chart, I'm just like, this is just horrible. Like, this has to change. And I'm noticing that there's slow kind of waves of things that are coming in, but I'm also trying to pace myself, knowing that there's going to be other opportunities that are going to come in the next month that can help me kind of benefit that situation. So be patient with other people, especially when it comes to traveling and communication, and watch for almost like bullies in your life right now. There's going to be, with that energy of Pluto, people who are going to challenge authority or tell you what you can or cannot do, or you're going to notice lots of roadblocks, whether it's energetically or quite literally, that's meant to kind of get you frustrated. And Pluto is also the energy of fear, or it can be about frustration. So there's going to be like lots of misplaced frustration as a result of fear. I believe that everything is derivative of basically love or fear. Fear, hate, anger, all the same stuff, right? So if fear is coming up, you want to acknowledge it and realize that it may be kind of, in some kind of Scooby-Doo costume, acting like another like energy, right? So acknowledging it and seeing it and dealing with it is the big lesson for the month ahead. And last but not least, on the 15th this week, we see the Sun in Capricorn come into conjunction with Pluto. Huge. This is actually going to highlight what it is we need to change. Think of like the sun is like turning the light on and it goes, oh, that's what's been hiding in the dark. That's what I haven't been acknowledging. There it is. It can be a light bulb moment. It can be an aha moment where you're like, oh my goodness, it's been this all along. Okay, now what do I change? Now what do I transform? However, I do believe down the road, we have to wait until Mars gets into Capricorn and starts cutting and severing and making all of these things. But look for the 15th for that aha moment. We'll see themes of ego death, rebirth, transformation, and becoming aware of where that really strict kind of power struggle or power play or bully is manifesting in our lives. All right, guys. So let's get into I'm going to pull cards for each and every one of the 12 signs. I'm going to talk to you guys about where specifically the Mercury retrograde is taking place in your chart, what that means for you, and then you'll get a tarot card to let you know what the advice is moving forward. As always with my predictions, listen to your rising, your sun, and your moon in that order. People ask me all the time, can I listen to my progress chart? Sure, absolutely. If you really resonate with your progress chart and you feel like that's really where the action is, you're more than welcome to do so. So for Aries and Aries rising, Mercury is retrograding in your 11th house. And your 11th house deals with your friends, your goals, your associations. It can also deal with like networks and groups that you belong to. Now it will retrograde back from the 11th into the 10th, which is going to represent this whole like, how are groups at work working together? How can we network better? How can we come together better? Where are we restructuring or reorganizing? You might notice that you're reorganizing something about your work or your career. Maybe there's people who are changing positions at work or resigning, or maybe there's new systems and things coming into work, especially because Mercury rules your 3rd and your 6th house. So it neatly deals with software, communication, transportation, computers, your schedule, where you're working. So something makes me wonder, like, is your work schedule up in the air? Are you used to working and you're not working? Are you delaying going back into the office? Are you reorganizing your career goals and in turn deciding that you want to start your own thing, or that you're going to be working with a friend? Does a friend reach out to you and say to you, hey, we have somebody who, at work is resigning. You'd be perfect for the position. Let me connect you to somebody. Networking and friends and working with other people are the name of the game this month. And you may find that ultimately it's kind of setting you up and getting you more in alignment with your goals. If you're like, hey, my job's great, I would say awesome. Just focus on networking and team building. Realize that there can be some major changes with offices or with particular coworkers that will be going on. The card you get is the 9 of Wands. To me, this feels like a lot of you wearing multiple hats. And kind of being like, okay, well, so-and-so called in sick and this person needs to be trained, and like you just being like the person who's carrying the team in a way. Or feeling like you're just, it's really challenging for you to keep going on. This can also materialize as just a number of people who are sick, calling out, overworked, overwhelmed, things like that happening that's making it more challenging for you to feel like you can kind of carry on. Now, 9s are energies that deal very much so with the lessons in the process though. So it's like, what are you learning? If you guys have been understaffed and overworked, what are you learning? Are you learning that you need to hire more people? Are you learning that you need to have better benefits? Are you learning that it's better for you to work with a job or with a particular company that's going to be more considerate of your health and overall well-being? That's a question I would ask. Look at him. He's all bandaged and bruised up, and he's gotten his ass kicked, and he feels like it's hard for him to keep going. So I'm not saying quit. I'm just saying consider your environment and ask yourself, is it worth the challenges to your physical, mental, or emotional health to just keep pushing through? Okay. All right, so now we've got Taurus and Taurus rising. So Taurus, Mercury is retrograding through your 10th house of career. This makes me feel like you thought you were going back to work, but you're not. Or you thought you were going to be launching a business, but you're not. Or you're restructuring and strategizing everything about your 10th house. Now, your 10th house, Aquarius, can be about your goals and kind of diversifying and doing different types of work. It can be about doing some kind of work with a network, or starting a network, or starting a group, or starting an association. That can be something else you're thinking about. It will dip back into your 9th house, which I think also deals with the legal side of things, or your philosophies or your beliefs. Like, a lot of Tauruses are having a very hard time this year because they're not really getting with the picture, and they're not realizing that the way that they used to work is dead and gone. Like, that doesn't work anymore. You can't go back to those jobs. You can't go back to that way of working. You can't go back to that schedule. So I think part of Mercury's retrograde into your 9th, which is a sister sign, Capricorn, is restructuring all of your beliefs when it comes to work, right? And how you can work. And also the legal process of work. 9th house is legality. What do you know when it comes to your profession? What can you fall back on? Where can you improve? Where do you need to fine tune certain things? Do you need to take a course, a workshop? Do you need to hire a publisher? Do you need to hire an attorney to help you with the process of launching something? Now, Mercury rules your 2nd house, which is money, and your 5th house, which is creativity. So it's almost like you're going, okay, is it really possible for me to live a very creative, authentic life and do what I'm passionate about doing, and make art and be happy and be successful and make money from doing so? With Mercury retrograding back into your 9th house, I think it's this reminder that's like, it's worth the effort of actually giving it a shot. Now, Taurus is more than any other sign, I would say. This is a month you really want to scale back. Most likely, most new ventures, new jobs, things like that are not going to go well. Be careful with going back to a job that you used to do. You may actually get a call, an email, or something from people that you used to work with, or a company you used to work with, or that boss that's like, everything's gone to hell, come back. Be very careful with these conversations, because I feel like it's a test of faith with Mercury going back into your 9th and asking you, are you really willing to relocate for a job? Are you really willing to move back to an old city? And does that fall into alignment with where you're actually going with your work? I've seen more than any other placement when there's a Mercury retrograde from the 10th into the 9th for any sign, that when they go back to the old job, the old profession, the old whatever, no matter how lucrative or good it looks, by the time Mercury goes direct and it comes back into their 10th house, they're like, never mind, I don't want to work here. Actually, this was a mistake. And 2 months later, they end up quitting. So really stay true with what your beliefs are. It's a little scary right now because it's uncomfortable, and there is this sense of you learning more about creativity and your passion and art, and also really showcasing your personal talents, that I would say, like, it's not worth taking the bait, to be honest with you. And the card that I get is 6 of coins. So it's almost like saying, like, don't feel like you just need to, like, leap, right? If you're like, I just need to have a job, I need to have a paycheck, I'll take anything. This is not the time to do that. It's basically saying there are people who need you. Stay open. You may find that you can have odd jobs, that you can do contractual work, that you can do some independent work, or that there are people who will work with you, who will help you. This is a card that comes up that's about give and take. So it's saying be mindful that, you know, your services may be needed and vice versa by other people. So it's a lot of, well, how can you help somebody else, and how can somebody else help you? All right, so keep that in mind. For Gemini and Gemini rising, this is a Mercury retrograde in your 9th house, and it's dipping back into your 8th. Now, Mercury rules your chart, Gemini, so Mercury retrogrades affect you more than most other transits. And with Mercury going retrograde from your 9th into your 8th, I see this as like a situation where maybe you're thinking about a move. You know, Mercury rules your 1st and your 4th house. So for a Mercury retrograde in the 9th is like, am I moving further away? Am I thinking about a faraway place? Am I thinking about going and planning a trip and going somewhere to see if I like it before I consider moving? There's something like that coming up. Now, for it to retrograde from your 9th into your 8th is about change and transformation. Now, the 8th house is other people. So there can be things like, I really want to go and move to this other city. Let me go suss it out. Let me book a trip. Let me make sure I have the finances to be able to go there and actually test it out and see if I like it. Then I also want to take a look at, well, what's it going to cost to live there? Can I get a job? Can I afford the cost of living? Am I looking at talking to my partner about our budget, how we can budget this and make this work? Am I applying for loans? Is there something going on there? Gemini, so much of the change that's going on for you this month is all about other people, right? You've got a Venus retrograde, a Mercury retrograde in your 8th, your partner's resources, your partner's money. So you guys have to be on the same team and really be communicating what can and cannot work. Because Mercury rules your 1st house, it's the body, it's the self, and the 4th house is family. So it tells me that there's a lot of you going back and forth with a partner that's like, well, can we afford this? Should we move to where there's family? Are we dealing with some kind of inheritance situation, or do we have to go and take care of an estate? Therefore, we have to go and, you know, be somewhere else for a while. Something like that can be coming up for you. And I think a Mercury retrograde in your 9th, because it's a sister sign, it's still making aspects, right? Like it's still close to Saturn and it's still making aspects to your ascendant or to your sun. So communicate, communicate, communicate. Don't allow there to be communication breakdown. It can get a little more emotional than you're liking because it's happening in the 8th involving your 4th house ruler. You get the Hierophant. Part of me wonders if like your relationship or your marriage or your job is on the line, because the Hierophant can be like, well, what's expected of you, right? If somebody isn't happy and they want to, you know, relocate, or your wife or your husband or your partner wants to be somewhere else, do you go and do you do that, or do you push back? The Hierophant's about getting advice. So you may be checking in with like a parent, a mentor, a therapist, a doctor, a professional. And it's interesting because it's happening in your 9th house. So does this mean that you're trying to like talk to an attorney or an estate lawyer? You know, are you going and talking to a professional about publishing or about rebranding or marketing yourself? That's something else that you could be doing. And are you feeling like everything's caught up in terms of your personal or your home life, so you can really be present for making some of those changes if you're trying to kind of restructure your identity or your public image in some way? Okay, so think about that, because it does look like help's on the way, but I feel like you may feel like you're going through the motions and things are a little bit more kind of buckled down and traditional, and you're kind of having to kind of get a little bit more grounded and serious, and it can be uncomfortable. All right, so we've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You've got a Mercury retrograde in your 8th house, dipping into your 7th. Yikes. I have to say, I've been talking to a lot of Cancer risings. You guys are just really going through it. Some of you guys are really in your feelings because the retrograde in your 7th. This is fireworks, guys. When you have a Mercury retrograde that drops from your 8th into your 7th, when there's a Venus retrograde in your 7th, secrets in regards to your partners are exposed. Partnerships, right? So if they are still talking to old lovers, if they are spending excessive amounts of money and you're not aware of it, if they are having affairs, if they are sexually having issues or psychologically having issues, if they're keeping secrets, hiding things, this is when you'll find out, okay? Trust me. I know you don't like hearing that, but you need to be aware of that. Because Capricorn's in your 8th and your 7th, it's not just your marital partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. It can be business partners. It can be whatever Saturn, wherever Saturn is in your chart. So pay attention to that, because Saturn rules your 7th. So look at your natal Saturn for more insight. Now for you, I say this because Mercury rules your 12th house of self-undoing, Gemini. So there's two sides to every story. And it also rules your 3rd house of communication. Intuitively, I don't feel good about this. I feel like this is the lead up for a lot of Cancer and Cancer risings, where if one party or the other has not been fully honest and forthcoming about situations, whether that's past relationships, current relationships, how you're feeling, where you stand, it's all going to come out. And the 12th house is what's hidden, but the 3rd house can be communications, documents, phone calls, text messages. So you can unexpectedly get some kind of weird Mercury retrograde message that can come up where somebody calls you, they tell you something, you catch something on your partner's phone, whatever, and you're like, what is this? And then it all unravels, right? I would say open your big, pretty Cancerian eyes and see everything that's going on right now, because it's meant to be showing you if there's more to certain stories in regards to your relationship or your partnership. You're going to see it. You need to know, right? And this is why we have Mercury retrogrades, because Mercury, Hermes, will actually bring that information from the ethers back to us so we are aware. And that may play out over a period of the shadow as well for you, but it's starting up now. Two of Cups. So interesting, because this has the ability to bring partnership together, right? Like you can grow together stronger by being open and upfront and honest. So this is saying somebody may come to you, they may give you information, somebody may want to partner with you, somebody may want to come back to you. That's something else sometimes you see with like a Mercury retrograde from the 8th to the 7th, or a Venus retrograde in the 7th. Somebody from the past involved with your partner may come back around also and be trying to kind of mingle. Overall, Two of Cups is a positive card though. So it's saying that like the relationship's intact, but part of me feels like there's going to be something that comes out, and I'm hoping that you guys are able to handle it in a way that's honest, and you both come to the table with, you know, with the best intentions and willing to kind of tell the truth, because the next card from the Two of Cups is the Three of Cups, and the Three of Cups is like three is a crowd. So you can kind of avoid there being any kind of conflict by hashing out any of those issues now. Overall, that's probably the best card you could have pulled for your transit, though, I have to say. So for Leo and Leo rising, you've got a Mercury retrograde in your 7th house of relationships. It's retrograding back into your 6th house of routine, health, and wellness. And Mercury rules your natal 11th and 2nd. Mercury retrograde in the 7th, very close to Saturn, serious decisions, communications, conversations regarding relationships, right? And because it rules your 11th and your 2nd house, it's about your goals, your friends, your self-esteem, your values. I've seen a lot of Leo risings or Leo suns that have been set up recently on dates with people, and their friends are like, you're not picking great partners. I have the perfect person for you. I have someone you should meet. And it's all happening now in the midst of the shadow, and they're actually meeting people who are better matches. So that's the positive side of this. That's the 11th house. But I think you're becoming really attached to your goals when it comes to relationships, and you're getting real, especially with Aquarius in your 7th house. Partners are a little erratic sometimes. They're not the most reliable. It's ruled by Uranus. But you're also realizing that it's not all about love and drama and romance. It's also about friendship, and that for you to be able to have a really solid relationship, you need to have that common basis of a friendship first. So there's something going on here with like a Mercury retrograde in your 7th. I get the feeling that friends can want to be lovers. Lovers can become friends. There can be this kind of like moving people around a little bit. You may even have a friend in your life that's complaining about their love life, and then their love life kind of changes for the better in some way. That's another way this can manifest. Now, when Mercury drops back into your 6th house, I feel like this is some Leos making the decision to put the kibosh on a relationship, because relationships die in the 6th. But also it can be about you realizing that you're not at work to make friends. Okay, a Venus and a Mercury retrograde in your 6th. It's like, be really careful talking to people at work about relationships. Mixing and mingling inter-office relationships can be a little challenging, and there can be some friendship fallouts at work happening. And with Mercury retrograding from your 7th into your 6th, the question is, are you having healthy relationships? Does it work for your schedule? Does it work for your time? Are you putting too much time into people who are a full-time job or need to work on themselves? That's the question that I would be asking. 5 of Wands, confrontational, combative energy, and a little bit of a back and forth with people. I think that for some Leos and Leo risings, it may be this like kind of being at odds with somebody, or kind of being on a break with somebody. Other people can come in, you get perspective, you decide whether or not you want to go back to that relationship. And you've noticed maybe you're fighting for something that's not fighting for you. And so maybe there's like this realization this week that's like, it doesn't have to be like this. Like the world is a hard enough place. We don't need to fight. We don't need to have drama. But realizing that you've been pushing for something, which has created conflict, but it hasn't actually brought you any progress. You haven't seen joy or any changes in a relationship come from that. So I think that this is interesting. Look at where there's conflict, maybe taking a step back, realizing that if conflict's coming up, it's not about you avoiding it. It's just more kind of going, I don't have time for this. All right, so for Virgo and Virgo rising, Mercury rules your chart. So heads up, this is gonna be a little bit of a wonky time. Now, Mercury is going retrograde from your 6th through your 5th house. Mercury obviously rules your 1st, and it also rules your 10th. I'm also a little weary about inner office romance and dating for you, Virgo. I'm also seeing a reoccurring theme of like a lot of reevaluating your love life with Mercury dropping down into your 5th house. And also a Venus retrograde being in your 5th house. A lot of Virgos are mending broken hearts, putting the past in the past, closing chapters, closing doors, really doing a lot of self-help, healing, heart healing, things like that. But I think because Mercury rules your 1st and your 10th, it's like, what are you taking responsibility for? Are you responsible for your routine? Are you responsible for your health? Are you responsible for your healing? The answer is yes. You can only control you. You can't control other people. You can only control your responses, right? And so this can be a time where it's like heartache, heartbreak, issues in love life can really be getting the best of you, throwing you off schedule, off your diet, off your sleep schedule, off your workout routines. And I think with Mercury going retrograde from your 6th into your 5th, it's like cleaning up your love life. It's also maybe there's much more of an emphasis in you getting back out there and dating. So you're kind of making adjustments to your schedule so you can meet people, so you can be working out and feeling your best if that's what's important to you. Watch for health issues. That can definitely happen. I have seen some Virgo risings with this retrograde shadow already who like had dates planned and then, you know, they got sick and they got COVID and now they're like, oh, I can't go to this dinner I've been looking forward to with so-and-so. So these are some things that can happen when you see a retrograde from the 6th to the 5th. But because it rules your 1st and your 10th house, it's what you're taking responsibility for, how you are orchestrating your schedule, but also what you make time for, right? You're in charge. Knight of Cups, positive card. It's talking about your emotional well-being, wellness. This can be a person who comes in, kind of sweeps you off your feet a little bit. Maybe you notice there's a change or a break in your work schedule, or that there's just like a lighter week or so ahead. Maybe you're in between jobs, you're making changes, you meet somebody new. So it's nice because you'll have the ability to go, oh, well, I can actually engage in this connection. It feels good. It's nice. It's a change. It's different. Venus retrograde can bring in like star-crossed lovers type scenarios. So I'd say be mindful of that not everybody who comes in will stay. But there's definitely energy of somebody coming in who could be a water sign, who could be very romantic and kind of healing, and definitely be somebody who you could get on well with. All right, so now we've got Libra and Libra rising. Mercury is going retrograde in your 5th house, and it will drop back into your 4th house. And Mercury rules for you your 8th house and your 11th house. So when Mercury is going retrograde from your 5th to your 4th, this tells me there's something that needs to change either about your emotions, your home, where you're living, or your family, in order for you to better function in your creative life, right? So 5th to the 4th. So some Libras or Libra risings are thinking about moving house, selling house, moving back somewhere, reorganizing their home, restructuring something. Very specifically, the 4th house for you can be also one of your parents. It can also be your kitchen. So these are the two things that you'll see happen. Some of you guys may get word or get insight that there was a death or there was an issue in the family, unfortunately, or you're dealing with an estate issue and you have to go home, or you have to go and be in somebody else's home. The other thing that can happen with this retrograde is that there's this realization that there's like not enough space or not enough organization in the home for you to do all of your 5th house stuff. So some Libras are pregnant, trying to get pregnant. They need more space for babies. Some of you guys are trying to have more space for your creative work and you're feeling like there's not enough like functional space in your home. So it's like, okay, what do we do to be able to make that possible? Can we move things around? Do we expand? Do we add on? Do we move? So these are some of the things that you're going to see over the next month and a half, especially because Venus is retrograde in your 4th house. So I would say weigh your options. Does it make sense to move? Does it make sense to sell things? Does it make sense to reorganize things? You have to think of your budget. And I would say don't do anything crazy. Certainly buying real estate for Libras and Libra risings right now, it's not so hot. So signing leases, buying homes, selling homes is not the best. And you might see things really slow down when it comes to making offers or like houses going through escrow or anything like that. Now for you, Mercury rules your 12th and your 9th house. So for Libras, this is going to bring up a lot of anxiety. It is a sister sign, so Aquarius does help you. Being that it's going to retrograde from your 5th house and make aspects to your sun sign or your rising or your moon in Libra, it's also like, well, what's going to make you happy? Like, what's going to make you the happiest? And what are you not communicating or talking about that would make you happy? And you need to either talk to people in your family, who you're living with, whatever, to like bring more happiness into the home. It can be a time where there is a reevaluation of, are we having kids? When are we having kids? Where are we going to live? All of that stuff as well. And because it's the 9th house, it's about the long-term planning. So some of you guys might be like, well, we're not going to move now, but we're going to move down the road. And keep in mind that when you get to the next Mercury retrograde, which will be May going into June, that's when you start making those plans. So right now you're kind of realizing like, well, does it make sense to redo the bathrooms if we're ultimately going to move type energy? But also because the 4th house is endings and family in the 8th house, energy where we're going to be seeing, you know, lots of aspects for you with Uranus. Keep in mind, there's lots of changes going on with partners or spouses, resources that are also going to, you know, kind of play into the decisions that you make. 6 of Cups, this is about kids. This is about children. This is about plans and goals when it comes to children, romance. Certainly the 5th house is about romance. So it's about returning to something, returning to conversations, touching base on those conversations, touching base on romance, reconnecting, rekindling. Like Libras and Tauruses are having the hardest time right now with the Venus retrograde. So there can be this emphasis in like, how can we not make the home process feel so rigid? How can we feel like we can do more connecting if we are feeling like we are tethered to home? There can also be old lovers that can return, because this is a soulmate card. And I think of like Venus retrograding in your 4th, Mercury retrograding from your 5th to your 4th. You may hear from people from the past who you need to kind of like wrap loose ends up with. And I would say this is a great card for feeling sentimental, but it's also, I think, really kind of touching on the Venus retrograde. That's like, well, reevaluating certain people from the past and kind of acknowledging like, okay, it's probably better that I left that there. Okay. So for Scorpio and Scorpio rising, Mercury is retrograding in your 4th house of home, family, where you're living, and it's retrograding from your 4th to your 3rd. And in your chart, Mercury rules your 8th and your 11th house. So when you have a Mercury retrograde in your 4th house, reorganizing the home, it's possibly reconsidering roots, where you're living, where you want to live, if you want to move back somewhere. If you want to invite friends, Aquarius, to come and visit you and staying in the home. There may be people who come see you who you haven't seen for a while. Now, when it retrogrades into the 3rd, in traditional astrology, in like Hellenistic, vehicles is the 4th house. And in modern day astrology, vehicles is the 3rd house. Scorpio rising, issues with cars. That's something that I've seen personally. That's something that I've seen for a lot of clients. I would say pay attention to vehicles breaking down, not starting, computers breaking down, not starting, having issues and bugs with phones, things like that are kind of common when you have a retrograde in the 4th or the 3rd house. So it's going to affect Scorpio and Scorpio rising the most. Now, because it rules your 8th and your 11th house, there's a lot of you communicating and talking to your partner about resources. So like, let's say a car does go out. Do you go and buy a new car? Do you share a car with your partner? Do you guys buy a car together? These are things you might talk about. When it comes to new gadgets and technologies, do you buy stuff together? Do you take out loans? Do you put it on a credit card? 8th house. So these are themes that you'll see as well. I think with Mercury retrograding from your 4th to your 3rd, it's a lot of like, okay, well, how big of a garage do we need for this car? Or, you know, does it make sense for us to stay in this particular house if we ultimately want to move somewhere else? So it's kind of similar to Libra, but I think for you, it's a little bit more uncomfortable, to be honest with you, because at least Libra, it's got aspects and it's an air sign. Scorpio and Scorpio rising are not going to do so hot in the next month because you're going to see that there's lots of friction because of the squares. So you're going to either see challenges with the home and like lots of home improvement, or you're going to notice that you're at odds with either who you're living with about how you're handling situations within the home. Watch for conflict with other family members as well. Scorpio risings especially, you're going to see this, and you also may see that there is lots of communication going on or back and forth with either neighbors or siblings, family members, talking a lot about what your plans are. I get 9 of Wands again. So it's like this feeling that's just like, okay, I'm exhausted. Like I'm doing so much, like how much more can I do? A Mercury retrograde back into your 3rd with Pluto and also Venus being there. A lot of Scorpio risings are distressed. Like there's a lot of stress with their daily routine. They're feeling like they're kind of juggling things. There's a lot going on. But the truth is that like now is the time this month and next month to get everything organized to make the whole process of ultimately what you're going to do in regards to your living situation down the road easier. So tackle these issues head on, maybe even asking for help, not taking everything on your own, learning to communicate and talk about what isn't working. That's really important with this card. For Sag and Sag rising, you've got a Mercury retrograde in your 3rd house. It's dipping back into your 2nd house. Mercury rules your 7th and your 10th. This makes me feel like there is a huge reevaluation that's going on with either a romantic partner or a business partner. And there's a lot of talking and discussing about money, resources, finances, like what it costs to run the business, what your overhead is, what the expenses are, how you can better budget things, if you need to issue new contracts or new websites or things like that. This is going to take time, Sag. Don't rush through this, okay? Communication seems really frustrating with Mercury retrograde in your 3rd back into your 2nd. And you may feel like there's unexpected expenses coming from vehicles, or there's unexpected expenses coming involving travel that you have to pay for that you weren't anticipating. Sag and Sag risings need to be mindful of their expenses and their spending more than any other placement right now, next to Gemini. Because Venus is retrograding conjunct Pluto in your 2nd. So there can be expenses that come out of the blue that you're like, oh man, I don't know if I have the money for this, right? Now, I would definitely hold off, Sag. I know Jupiter is in your 3rd house, and you're probably itching to book a trip, get a car, things like that. And I would say wait, because you'll do that in the midst of 2 retrogrades, and then you'll realize that you went over budget. It's better to wait when we see like Venus and maybe the Sun or Mars go through Pisces. And I think that's going to be a better move for you, honestly. You could wait also when they're all direct in Aquarius, but I would at least wait until February before you make these moves. Now, because it rules your 7th and your 10th house, it tells me there can be a status change. So some of you guys might, go from being single to being in a relationship, from being an employee to being a partner, from being single to being married. These kinds of things happen with these aspects. Ace of Wands. So this is a great card, actually. This is kind of saying that there are new things you want to initiate. Maybe there's new projects, there's new services, maybe that you want to launch new creative endeavors and you're just trying to figure out how to do it. So the momentum is there. It's really positive. All these planets that are going to be moving into Aquarius, they do sextile, make positive aspects to your sun or your ascendant. So you'll be able to communicate and move about more freely next month. Right now is like noticing the limitation and kind of the delays, but that is almost what's needed right before we actually see a breakthrough. I also feel like this might be talking more about the month of like either April, August, or December for when you're making launches, that there may be times during the fire months that's good for you to release and actually start something new. And this is all about passion, creativity, being excited. Maybe you're wanting to launch a new website for a new online project that you're working on. So there's a lot of excitement behind what you're doing and a lot of creative energy as well. I like a Mercury retrograde in the 2nd because you become aware of all of your talents and you kind of have to make the best with what you have. So you have to get like really crafty. So some people might have like an excess of like materials or whatever. And they're like, okay, well, how do I use this up? Whether it's food or it's crafting materials or just kind of going back on some of your skills as ways to make more money. So now we've got Cap and Cap rising. Mercury is retrograde in your 2nd house back into your 1st. probably going to have you feeling a little tongue-tied. I would be cautious with counting your chickens before they hatch financially. I also feel like because Mercury rules your 6th and your 9th, wow, that jumped out again. Ace of Wands again. Because that rules your 6th and your 9th, I feel like it's like you realizing that there's going to be a huge shift in the kind of work that you want to be doing, how you're making money. You're re-examining what you think, how you feel, what you have time for. There may be a huge shift in you going into some kind of work that involves writing or communication or making money that way. I think of like Mercury going retrograde from the 2nd into the 1st as you being like, oh my God, guys, I really think that I'm going to get the management position and it's going to be like this boost and I'm going to make X amount more money and it's in the bag. I've got it. And you're celebrating and then you find out somebody else got the position. That's kind of like how it feels, right? So don't count your chickens before they hatch. Watch your spending. Realize that you could be burning a hole in your own pocket. Because Mercury rules your health, 6th house, coworker aspect, it also rules your 9th, which is about travel. I feel like there is this like restructuring that's going on where you're like learning that the better that you are with money and resources and time, the more capable you're going to be to actually go on a trip, go on a vacation and get time away. So if you're one of those Capricorns that's like, I'm exhausted, I'm overworked, I'm sick, it's the beginning of the year, I can't start like this, and you're panicking, then it's all about looking at the situation and going, how can I prevent this moving forward? How can I actually be better with my money and my resources and structuring it so I'm taking time off? Do I need to hire a health coach, somebody to teach me how to work out, somebody to teach me how to eat, 6th, 9th type energy? And just really watch what you're eating and what you're putting in your mouth because that's the 2nd house. So the body is kind of having some challenges right now. You might notice that you're just lower energy than usual. Ace of Wands jumped out again with the Judgment card. So it's basically like saying like, make the moves, make the calls, get moving, get active, stick to it. When you make a decision, stick to it. There can be a lot of like going back and forth or being stressed, and maybe stress is actually what's affecting your health right now. And you may not feel like you're really getting that clarity until February. So be patient because your body can be really stressed out. You don't want to say, yeah, sure, I'll take the job. And then you realize that you're just completely run down and you can't show up and then you're calling in sick. So take that time to recuperate. For Aquarius and Aquarius rising, Mercury is retrograde in your 1st house. Also tongue-tied a little bit. Very close to Saturn. So it's like, do I cut somebody off? Do I not? Do I tell people how I'm thinking? Do I not? So you may be a little more reserved than usual, especially because it's dropping from your 1st into your 12th. Wow. Love that energy for you though. I'm really loving that it also is going to expand your meditation process. It's going to give you time for healing. It's going to give you some really kind of crazy wild dreams. When I see Mercury retrogrades in the 12th, usually there's some really symbolic kind of otherworldly things that can happen in the dream state that can give you insight into your waking life. Now, Mercury rules your 5th and your 8th. So it's about children, love life, creativity, and joint resources with other people. What I'm liking is that I feel like there is a sense of you perfecting something. If you are in film, photography, creativity, design, nonprofit, spirituality, any of these realms, the retrograde's good for you because it's dropping into your 12th house. You're rethinking, reworking something. There's something that you need to kind of tweak and perfect. Jupiter's moving into your 2nd. It's definitely going to bring you more resources, but something's not ready to launch yet. Like you're not ready to tell the world something yet. You're not ready to tell the world that you're pregnant. You're not ready to tell the world that you actually just met somebody new and that you think you're falling in love. Like there's a sense of you wanting to protect something before you're ready to kind of let everybody know what change or transformation you're going through, especially because the 5th house does deal with children, but the 8th house deals with pregnancy. So I could see like a lot of Aquarius suns and Aquarius risings getting ready to find out they're pregnant or getting ready to show some transformation that their body has gone through. It can be that you have been working on a transformation, especially if you've had Saturn in the 1st with Jupiter this whole last year. There has been all kinds of changes to your philosophy, your belief, and your body. You can go through major transformations physically. Just with a Mercury retrograde there, don't go chopping off your bangs. Don't do any of that stuff. You may feel like you need another month or whatever before you're ready to give your grand reveal. And last but not least, Pisces, Mercury retrograding in your 12th back into your 11th. Now, Mercury rules your 4th house of home and family. and your 7th of relationships. Ooh, I get the impression that this Mercury retrograde, it may have you hearing from exes from the past on social media platforms, running into them at a party, a friend being like, hey, your ex called me, what's going on? They followed me on Snapchat type of shit. You may also find that with this retrograde in your 12th, super tapped in, you may kind of like, if you've gone through a period of like not hearing from a friend or a friend has dropped out, they may reach back out to you. They may say like, sorry, this is what I've been going through. This is where I've been. You may have a dream about a friend and reach out to them and be like, hey, I had a dream about you. Is everything okay? A friend may confide in you and say, hey, I'm having issues in my relationship and I've been keeping it private, but I don't know what to do, or I'm thinking about moving. 4th is home and family, 7th is relationships. So 12 can have you thinking and reflecting a lot on this, on where you've lived, where you've been, what your home life has been like, what your relationships have been like. And if you're getting ready to let it all go and opt for a new path, a new vision, being more okay on your own, Jupiter in your ascendant is going to help you do that. But I get this feeling that if there has been a falling out with a friend, if you haven't heard from somebody, or they have gone quiet for whatever reason, there's another reason. It may not be that you guys are having issues or that that person doesn't want to communicate. It may be that they've been kind of keeping you in the dark about either a family or a relationship issue. And, you know, good friends can come back into your life in a very big way right now. I think that especially with Saturn being in your 11th house, in your 12th house, that it can be like kind of this like breath of fresh air because you have felt kind of lonely or isolated. Venus is going retrograde in your 11th house as well. You're getting really serious about your goals and also wanting to be with friends who are like-minded. So if you do have a friend that's struggling or having some issues, there may be a sense of you being like, come hang out with us, come to our mixer, come to this networking event. Like, don't worry about it, it's fine. Like, let's reconnect. So look for that energy as that pops up. 8 of coins. Yeah, definitely like working through things, like working through issues in terms of like being able to co-work on something. Maybe it's even like if you've got somebody else who's used to being an entrepreneur and working on their own, if you are one as well, it's like, hey, let's work together, let's co-work, let's get out of the house, let's do something different type of energy. But this is working hard, perfecting something, bringing something together, something valuable. So it can say that somebody brings you something valuable. It can be that they bring you work, they bring you like the magic touch and help you kind of finish something that you're trying to wrap up, or they're actually talking to you about money and investing of some kind because it is an 8. All right, guys, hopefully this was helpful for you. Definitely a colorful week. I'm sending you all the good vibes to hang in there. Realize that we're just kind of going through the motions of just letting some things kind of unfold as they need to. In a lot of ways, yes, it's a new year, but it feels like 2021 is still wrapping up. So if you're noticing that you're swimming in the soup, you're kind of emotional, you're kind of feeling like, this is not how 2022 is supposed to start, just hold faith and take acknowledgement basically, and be aware that wherever there is resistance or conflict this week, it's to help you kind of unravel all of that and start something new. Okay. We have now moved to doing my live shows on Saturdays. So it'll be Saturday evenings at 7 o'clock, usually Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern time. So look for that. We're doing live Astro this Saturday. If you haven't already checked out my live 2022 overview for all of the astrology, it's long, but it's good. It's got lots of stuff in there to give you insight as to how the year is going to go. Check out my memberships if you want to support the channel and make it possible for me to keep doing this and creating more content. Just got new gear with some of the memberships that have already joined in this last year. So thank you so much for that. You're going to see new videos coming out. I'm getting everything ready. I'm kind of like, shit, I shouldn't have bought this during Mercury Shadow, but whatever. I know it's already going to take some adjusting, like what we brought in, we're already kind of moving around and stuff, but it's going to make it possible for me to start doing vlogs. We also have all kinds of new touches and stuff coming to the channel, so I'm really stoked about that. So thank you to the members who have been supporting Beyond the Veil and making this possible. Coming up on a year back, super stoked about that. Working on some other videos, getting ready to give you guys, hopefully in the next week or so, the Venus retrograde part 2, because we got another 20 days. And to be honest with you, I hope a girl's gonna make it because this is horrible. And Pluto return part 2 also, but you know, that's not really happening until closer to March. So I'm definitely gonna try to get out there for you soon. And next week, we have a lot going on next week. There is going to be a full moon in Cancer. So maybe if I can squeeze it into my schedule, I'll try to get that out a little bit sooner so you can kind of get ahead of that and see that video. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoy the week. I hope it goes well, and I will see all of you very soon. Take care.